Kent State and the Vietnam War and all that, and everything just kind of flew apart. And the Kent State riots were a whole lot different than the Ohio State riots. Kent State was a hit and run tactic. And a lot of the National Guard students couldn't handle hardcore because a lot of them were Vietnam veterans against the war. They were combat Vietnam veterans. You can't expect National Guard weekenders to know how to deal with that. And so it was a very hit and run. I mean, the whole thing happened in like 3-4 days. Ohio State was like, oh, let's go out and have breakfast and we'll go out in the Oval and chase people around. And it wanted, but no violence. It was a week like a big party compared to Kent State. Kent State was, violent. And then they brought in the National Guard and the state police. And the whole thing just fell apart. I was at home, I worked at a family greenhouse, and I didn't go back till Sunday.
Okay.
So I'd missed the whole, Friday, Saturday, Thursday. I didn't even know about it really. So I went back to campus, and I was there when the ROTC building burned down. And they'd asked the National Guard, is there any ammunition in that building? And National Guard's like, the ROTC people said, no, there's no ammunition there. Well, then a couple rounds heated up, blew off, and there is ammunition. Just back off and let it burn to the ground. So that kind of started, but like I say, the cutting of the fire hoses, the cutting of the lift arm gates, all that kind of stuff, those are serious radicals. And I didn't know any, but I saw some of them, and you could tell these were like older people. And the Vietnam veterans. And the students, the only thing the students really want is to get the guard off the campus. These hardcore people, NSDS, there was Weatherman.
Yeah, like Tom Hayden and the SDS organization.
Well, and one of my architectural teammates, I never knew was one of those radicals. So they were looking at me because I knew him.
Guilt by association.
Yeah. And then they realized I was just some dumb nerd, so they let it all go. But I think it was just the fact that it was more like hit and run kind of stuff. The dumpster fires. All that stuff I'm sure were really people knew what they were doing, as opposed to Ohio State or anywhere else. They were out there. And actually, I grew up across the street from the deputy chief of the Cleveland Police. And he confided me later, they'd gotten word that a Midwestern beer-drinking college town was going to be hit. They just didn't know which one. And then it happened. And Kent State was just the perfect place for that.
Why?
Because it's a wild beer-drinking town. And you had bars there, James Gang was playing there, and a lot of that whole string of bars down there, the Cove and JB's and the Loft, and it just seemed like that's where they decided to hit. So the National Guard was up against experienced people that they didn't know how to contend with.
Outside agitators
and older Vietnam vets. The students, like I say, they were mostly beer-drinking jock school. And, the radical movement was starting to come in. But I remember when those riots were happening on the Hill, down in the Commons, there's a bunch of people playing soccer. Or football or something.
Ignoring it, just like you were talking about the greasers, and there was no overlap of the cultures.
So, when it actually was happening that Monday, I wasn't part of it. I was on my way to class. Taylor Hall's the architecture building. So I was like, well, what's happening here? And I stood up on the bell thing, what's going on here? And so I just kind of wandered up, and then it was all happening. And it happened so fast. The whole thing about the guard and the students chasing each other on the other side of the building, I never saw any of that. I got up to, there's actually a picture looking up the hill and the guard shooting off to the left of the picture. That's about where I was. And the guard ran past me, and I'm, yelling at them, and they're like, the guard were in shock. I mean, you know, these are weekenders. I don't think they realized what they had done.
Or had been trained to deal with any of that.
To my way of thinking, they should have never been handed loaded M1 Garands. But anyway, so I got to the top of the hill, and the National Guard is on the other way, and I saw, you know, the students laying around and all that. Some people I knew were taking care of the wounded, and I just kind of wanted to see what was going on. I went into the architecture building. There were people in there gagging from the tear gas, kind of hiding inside the building. And I went outside, and that's where I stood next to that photographer who took that famous picture. And I'm just kind of, it happened so fast, everybody just kind of dumbfounded as what was going on. And I went back to where I lived. I called my parents. I said, you know, we wouldn't believe what just happened here. And they said, just get out of there. So I left. So I just, you know, I went home to the family business, and then they had shut down the whole place. So.
What was the aftermath like? I mean, how did it get back to normal, or did it ever?
Well, I know that they shut down the campus. I mean, they locked it down. Everybody go home. You're out of the dorms. You go where you want to go. I would live in a boarding house. When it happened, I was on the opposite side of the campus from where I lived. I was on the dorm side. That's where I was. I lived on the other side by the South Willow Street. And so I knew a Kent State cop. I said, hey, I'm just trying to get over there, back to where I'm supposed to be. So he went and talked. He said, well, fall in line with these soldiers, and just you walk with them and you get to go back. So I'm walking with these guys, and I'm looking down, and they're holding submachine guns. I went, what are they doing with submachine guns on a college campus? But I got back to my side of town, and I left. And I know they closed the whole thing down. They only had undercover police and some snipers and stuff like that to just guard the campus, make sure it didn't reoccur. But after that, you know, like I say, it was different from the other campuses because it was just so fast, hit and run kind of a thing.
Knee-jerk reaction, or, you know, with these untrained, you know, guardsmen.
Well, you had a lot of state police who were walking around being tough guys, pointing shotguns at people, and, you know, and that I had to deal with a couple of those too. So I mean, they're just, you know, if you're walking somewhere, somebody comes up and starts pushing you and poking you and pushing you and pushing you, sooner or later you're going to push back. And I think that's what was happening. Mm-hmm. The students who were on the hill there, they got caught between the guard and Taylor Hall. They really didn't have anywhere to go. And the parking lot was full of cars. Now, I don't know if I mentioned to you, but one of the pictures that of Kent State, you can see it on the website, is a picture of two guys diving behind a Volkswagen Bug. One of those guys is Chris Butler. Actually, I was walking around the campus on the common side of Taylor Hall, and they got those placards set up, you know, they're about this size right here, and they got a photograph etched on them. And I was just walking around looking at them. I see this guy, I think I've showed you my picture, standing on a bell. And I'm going, whoa, that's me. And I remember standing on the bell because I was just trying to see what the heck was going on. I wasn't a protester. I was just trying to see over the crowd what was going on. Somebody, I guess, stepped by picture. And a lot of other people stood and sat on a bell for somehow I ended up on that placard. So I'm going to go back there because I never did take a picture of it. This year, well, I'm going to take a picture of it. My daughter's going along because she was Kent State. So, you know, this is where I stood, and this is what I saw, and it gives her kind of a first-hand look, you know, of what happened.